Welcome to the Compliance Officer's Playbook podcast. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the UK financial sector,
Okay.
um, specifically a recent warning that the Financial Conduct Authority,
Right.
the FCA,
Yeah.
issued to banks
Yeah.
about their approach to the new consumer duty.
Interesting.
It seems like there's a concern that instead of truly embracing a culture of consumer duty,
Yeah.
some banks might be just relying on their compliance teams
Right.
as a safety net just to catch violations.
Yeah, this is really fascinating because the FCA isn't just, pointing fingers or anything like that.
Right.
They're actually outlining what they're kind of seeing as a fundamental shift in how they expect banks to approach consumer protection.
Okay.
They're really pushing for this proactive, embedded approach, not just a reactive, check-the-box compliance mentality.
Got it. So let's unpack this a little bit for our listeners who may not be as familiar with the UK regulatory landscape.
Sure.
Could you give us a quick rundown of what this consumer duty actually entails?
Absolutely. So the consumer duty essentially boils down to prioritizing fair treatment and positive outcomes for consumers of financial products and services.
Okay.
It goes beyond simply disclosing information
Right.
and actually kind of places an onus on the banks to genuinely act in the best interests of their customers.
So it's not just about avoiding fines, it's a more holistic approach to customer relationships.
Precisely. And what the FCA is concerned about is that some banks are relying too heavily on their risk and compliance teams, what they call the second line of defense, to catch these consumer duty violations after they happen.
I see. So instead of building a culture where everyone is thinking about the customer's best interests,
Right.
it's becoming the compliance team's burden to police every interaction after the fact.
That's the worry. Yeah, and the FCA is essentially saying this approach is insufficient.
Okay.
Imagine a scenario where a bank pushes a complex financial product without fully explaining the risks simply because it's profitable.
Right.
The compliance team might catch it later, but the damage to the customer is already done.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So what does this mean for individual employees within a bank?
Yeah.
How would a loan officer, for example, need to change their approach under this new duty?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a loan officer operating under the consumer duty wouldn't just focus on hitting sales targets.
Right.
They would need to carefully consider the customer's ability to repay, the suitability of the product, and ensure clear communication throughout the process.
Got it.
It's really a shift from a sales-driven mentality to a customer-centric one.
So from a compliance perspective, what are the potential consequences for banks that don't make this shift?
Well, the FCA has made it very clear that they're prepared to use the full force of their regulatory powers. We're talking increased scrutiny,
Okay.
potential fines,
Right.
and even reputational damage,
Yeah.
which in today's world can be even more damaging than a financial penalty.
For sure.
Customers have choices, and a reputation for prioritizing profits over people can be very hard to shake.
Yeah. So it sounds like they're sending a pretty strong message here.
Oh, they absolutely are. And I think it reflects a broader trend that we're seeing globally.
Okay.
Regulators are moving away from simply enforcing rules and towards fostering a culture of ethical behavior and customer centricity.
That's really interesting, and it raises an important question for our listeners. How can organizations effectively measure and demonstrate a true culture of compliance rather than just, ticking boxes?
Right.
It's not as simple as just having a set of rules.
Right. It's a very complex challenge. It requires a genuine commitment from the top down,
Okay.
clear communication training, and perhaps most importantly, aligning incentives across all levels of the organization.
So weaving the principles of consumer duty into the very fabric of the organization.
Precisely.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive.
Great talk.
Yeah, this was really interesting. We hope this conversation has given you a better understanding of the FCA's warning and the implications for banks operating in the UK.
Absolutely.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe to the Compliance Officer's Playbook podcast for more insightful content.
Yeah.
And for our listeners who love this show and crave even more, become a paid subscriber today for $4.99
What a deal.
and get full access to all premium episodes packed with insights, stories, and value you won't find anywhere else.
Sounds great.
The link is in the show notes. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everyone.
See you next time.
Bye.